I am delighted that now I am going to introduce our first guest, who, if you are one of our organizers, you have seen her in our organizer meeting. She is really, really, really working with us. Wan Smith. I'm going to read her bio because there's been a little change. Juan has served for more than a decade as a purpose-driven power strategist and movement builder with a passion for dismantling oppression in every form, energy democracy, and community empowerment. As a co-founder of We the Plug Tho and organizing director for Georgia Conservation Voters, Juan works in coalition with communities and local leaders to educate, shift power, and advance equity to achieve racial, environmental, and economic justice for Black and marginalized people. Juan firmly believes, and she's also a minister, as you have done to the least of these brothers and sisters, you have done unto me. Welcome, Juan.
Thank you so very much, Andrea. It is definitely a pleasure to be amongst friends tonight. And I counted just that, right? Like so many of you, we've been together virtually in the trenches, right? For like the last 3 or 4 months, like really putting down on behalf of regular, everyday individuals all across the state of Georgia. I'm here tonight on invitation to give a hearty thanks and an update from the field. I know you all are ready for that, right? So on behalf of We the Plug Tho, and I'm going to just give some background information for those of you who are new as to who We the Plug Tho are and what it is we do. But I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you to all of the supporters for Center for Common Ground. Thank you for all of the volunteers. Thank you for everyone who supports any of the work, because everything that I'm going to delineate over the next couple of minutes is because of you. So I'd be remiss if I didn't start off by saying thank you to Andrea and your leadership, to all of the organizers, to all of the vendors, and all of the Center for Common Ground supporters. And so before I bring you updates from the field, I want to tell you just a little bit about We the Plug Tho and our work in general, so you'll understand the context of the update. And somebody is already in the chat. I love it. Let me tell you all, right? Like I'm always in the chat. So yes, I can speak and I can interact with the chat simultaneously. So give it to me. So somebody was like, how'd you get the name We the Plug Tho? Perfect place to start. Glad you asked. So last year in 2020, there was a group of community members as well as activists and organizers who responded to a number of issues that were happening local during the midst of COVID. There is a energy regulatory governing body across the country. They're local, they're statewide, called the either Public Service Commission or Utility Commission. And in the state of Georgia, there are 5 individuals who are on this particular board for the Public Service Commission. They are elected officials. And in the midst of a pandemic, a health crisis, in the midst of severe economic decline, and in the midst of a movement to right-size racial injustices and homicides in 2020, this governing body of privilege decided that they would end the moratorium on electricity shutoffs across the state of Georgia. And not only did these individuals of privilege determine that folks should have used their $1,400 stimulus check to pay their bills and the relief was over, right? Because they thought that $1,400 was enough for people to sustain people who were in the middle of crisis. That's how out of touch they were. Not only did they end a moratorium on electricity shutoffs, but they had the audacity to go on social media and make sexist and racist comments about women's rights to choose. about the fight for Black lives, and about economically depressed communities. These are elected officials that we're talking about that had the audacity in the midst of crisis in community to deny folks a reprieve and then to make such disgusting comments as if there was going to be no reprisal or accountability. So community people got together and said, we're going to hold these individuals accountable. And that's how we, the Plug Tho, started. We were a group of people who said, we are going to hold these elected officials accountable for their bad behavior. Now, how do we get our name? Well, it's a play on words, right? So our focus is energy equity, environmental and utility justice. So when you think about energy and electricity, you have a plug, right? And you plug this cord or plug into a socket, and that is how you get power and electricity. That is how you get the energy you need to power whatever it is that you need. And so it's a play on words. We, the Plug Tho, when we connect to each other, we have the power to solve any issue that faces our community. Our connection gives us the power to overcome any obstacle. And we do energy work, so it's cute. We the plug. And then they say, well, what is the though? How did you get THO on the end? Well, the simple answer to that is we, the plug, was not available on social media. So we had to add something to the end. And THO is just an affirmation. It's like, amen, it's so be it. It just affirms that we are the plug. So that's how we got our name. And that's our work. We work to hold regulatory officials accountable for the decisions that they make and the ways in which they impact regular everyday people. So our work last year was around the Public Service Commission. We had a bunch of wins last year, but this year, there is a lesser known group of utility regulation that we are focusing on. In years past, we've done, again, the Public Service Commission, which works with investor-led. We also do rural electric co-op work. And for 2021, we are working on small town city-led utilities, which are called munis, municipal-led utilities. And the reason we decided to focus on municipal-led utilities for 2021 is because in these small remote places across the state of Georgia, the income from utilities are unjustly used oftentimes to either support, supplement, or offset the operating budget, the general fund of these small towns. There are excessive fees, policies, and programs that are implemented in a way that uses, in a punitive way, that uses our dependency on utilities such as gas, electricity, and water to fund whatever the default or whatever the miss is in the city. And so over the years, we've been hearing suppressive stories of oppression, which are people's relationship to their electricity, and no one was doing anything about it. We work on co-op work. There's a bunch of co-op interests across the state. There's a bunch of Georgia Power and public service interests, but no one was looking out for the individuals across the state in remote places. So for 2021, we the Plug Tho says we are going to stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in rural communities so that they too can have an energy democracy and energy equity. So we started out by listening, right? We don't have the answers. We do not purport to have the answers. We do not go into communities with one size fits all options and strategies. We do not assume to know what folks are struggling with every day. So what we said is that we're gonna go in with ethics and integrity, and we're gonna listen. So we spent the entire month of April virtually going all across the state of Georgia to listen to the electricity and energy stories of everyday individuals all across the state. And when we were planning, like how are we gonna contact? How are we gonna connect? Center for Common Ground stepped up and they saved the day. So that's the background information. We needed to determine how, in the midst of COVID, with all of the CDC regulations and guidelines, with the burden of distance geographically, how are we going to connect with community members across the state to hear their stories? And so the postcarders came through. The postcarders came through. Let me tell you the most important component of what the postcard volunteers did. You allowed us to connect, to do cold contacts in low-tech communities that would not have heard from us any other way. Postcarding is a best practice, just in case you didn't get it the first time, for low-tech cold contact outreach. And we were able to get 90% of our attendees because of postcard contacts. 90% of individuals who showed up from places we've never heard before. Sandersville, Ellaville, Elberton, Wiggum. I live in Georgia, been here for a long time, almost 2 decades, and these are places I've never heard of. But your postcards, they were effective, they were relevant, they were timely, and people turned up and showed out. So the first thing is we had successful contacts, right? So because of the postcard, we had successful contacts, we had successful turnout, and we were able to hear the stories of the people. Unfortunately, the stories were very sad. In places where the median income was $26,000 a year, the average electricity bill was $600 a month. I can't imagine. I can't begin to imagine. In some of these places, there was not a base fee, like maybe a $2 or a $3 fee to remit payment. The processing fee was a percentage of the utility bill. So if your utility bill is $600 or $700 a month, the processing fee is an additional $20. Again, in places where the median income is $26,000. And let me preface this for you just to kind of, you know, sometimes we live in a capitalist society and our relationship to things are off-center. In 2021 in America, access to affordable energy should be a human right. It should not be codified. It should not be access of privilege, but these natural resources that produce electricity should be extended to all in this country at an affordable rate. And it is egregious that a city would take advantage of people and not only charge them $600, $700. I mean, we got $1,200. I mean, the stories were crazy, but on top of that bill, a processing fee that is so absurd. We also got stories about punitive fees. So if folks are disconnected, there is a disconnection fee. There is also a reconnection fee and an additional deposit. So if you were disconnected because you couldn't pay your bill, imagine not having the money to pay your bill. The only way that you can be reestablished, the only way your power can be restored is if you pay a disconnection fee, a reconnection fee, and an additional deposit on top of the full payment. And so this is why your work was so important, right? And I know a lot of us are used to doing direct civic engagement, but we have to ask ourselves, and this is something that Andrea said so succinctly to me the other day, and it was so timely. Are we doing party work or are we doing justice work? We have to ask ourselves, are we committed to party work or are we committed to justice work? And if we are committed to justice work, everything will fall in line. The title of our series is the road to midterms. If we are in constant contact and communication with citizens across this country, if they know that we care about their hyper-local issues, their felt needs, their assessed needs, and their ability to be able to influence processes and systems in their community, they will stand in solidarity with us, not just for midterms, but for primaries, general elections. When they see our postcards, they will respond. When they get our emails, they will click the actions, they will participate. It is all connected. And all of this work moves at the speed of trust. So what's next, right? What's next? I'm gonna wrap, but what's next? Phase 2 of the postcard campaign is next. OMG, we are so excited. So as I mentioned, we spent all of April listening to community members. We're gonna spend all of May combining quantitative data, because in America, you gotta have scientific data. So we are going to pair the scientific quantitative data with the community narratives and anecdotal data, so that as we are going back in community, right, we have hardcore facts to uplift, amplify, and elevate the community narratives. And you're going to help us get back into community. So starting next week, the end of next week, phase 2 of the postcard campaign will launch. We are going to be back at our desks, back at our writing tables, back on the couch with our legs propped up, writing postcards, so that we can invite community members back to the strategy sessions, so that they can determine how and if they want to solve the issues that were lifted and resonated during the listening tour. Those meetings are going to happen in July, but phase 2 of postcards, so people know when the meetings are and how they can connect, is going to begin at the end of next week. So we're going to circle back. We weren't just listening to listen, but we were listening so that we could strategize. We're going to take the strategies, thanks to you, back to communities, and the communities will invite us in so that they can own the solutions, and they can direct and influence the processes for change in their communities. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Juan. I mean, I'm just going, wow, that is so exciting. And you have a line. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Moved at the speed of trust. Oh, that is the most important thing for everybody to come away with tonight. That when we work with communities, number one, we listen to their needs, and we don't project our wants on those communities. Go, oh, we know exactly what you need this. And then we wonder why, when the election comes around, people say, oh, right, yeah, I didn't vote, my vote doesn't matter. But when communities know they've been listened to, when communities are brought in to become part of the solution, then they're like, okay, wait a minute, this is going to be a good fight. So let me go get my neighbor down the street who didn't come.
Yes.
We're going to go bring more people, and we are going to participate. I will take maybe 1 or 2 questions for Juan, and then we will go to our next speaker. I mean, we've got all these great comments. I'm looking for a question. People are going, yeah.
There was a question about what exactly is a processing fee.
Yes, thank you, Nancy.
So sometimes when you pay either online or by phone, to take the credit card, they charge you an additional fee. I mean, sometimes it's, very minuscule, maybe $1, maybe $2, but it's the credit card or the payment processing fee. And in this particular instance, it's not a set fee, but to get more money, they make it a percentage of the bill. So the cost just to pay the bill The cost just to pay the bill, and we're not talking about, I see somebody put it in the chat. We're not talking about for postcards. We're talking about for people to submit payments for their electricity bills. In this particular instance, the person had almost a $700 bill, and the percentage that they had to pay was an additional $20.
When you don't have $700, when you barely scrape that together, finding another $20 is hard. One of the notes I just stuck in chat is, I'm a member of a rural electric cooperative. So if I want to pay by credit card, it is a fixed fee of $3.95, as opposed to mailing a check. Not everybody has checking accounts these days. A lot of banks discourage it. So what people have is they've got debit cards.
Awesome. And there was a comment in the chat about contributing to We the Plug Tho. You can do that through Center for Common Ground.
I got to set up a page for you. I didn't know we were going to do that. So I will get the page set up, folks. I wasn't ready for that.
I'm volunteering
yeah.
Center for Common Ground.
All right,
and let me just say, We the Plug Tho, we're just a self-organized group of folks. So we're literally not even an official 501c3. We're just people who came together to throw down, and literally we are at the mercy of the resources of different organizations and the community. So thank you very much for that. Yep.
Juan, thank you so very, very much for that. I mean, I always get inspired when I hear you. So again, this is Georgia, people. This is getting into those communities that nobody ever heard of. When I first started working in Georgia, and I was talking to the president of the Black Middle Georgia Mayors Association, he said, I have one question for you, and based on your answer, I'll decide if this conversation continues. And his question was, do you think Atlanta is Georgia? Do you think Georgia is Atlanta? And I said, no. And he said, all right, this conversation can continue. So very, very important. Our outreach to those small towns where when we look at the election results, yes, we know that Atlanta is going to be blue. But if we do no outreach to the rural communities, are they going to be 90-10, 80-20, or are they going to be 55-45? So that all that power that we've got in Atlanta doesn't suddenly get thrown by our complete lack of power in the rural areas. And most southern states are rural states with a couple of large cities thrown in. So Juan, thank you so very much for all your work.
Thank you to all of you. We appreciate your support.
Yay.